The Human Founder Podcast by Gali Bloch-Liran.
Hi, I'm Gali Bloch-Liran and welcome to The Human Founder, the podcast where we speak about the mental aspects of the entrepreneurial journey. Entrepreneurs often describe the emotional roller coaster that is embedded in being an entrepreneur investor, such as when you experience the lowest of lows when you want to raise your fund and the first closing is 5 million shorter from the target number that you want to close. And the highest of highs is when you see a company growing from the small things that you invest in them and in the team in the everyday life. And it's from that place of uncertainty, the need to constantly self-manage ourselves, keep up our energy and be mentally resilient in order to deal with everything. Well, it's not easy. In each episode, I will be talking to entrepreneurs, investors, psychologists, being their sounding board, with the goal of creating a space for this less spoken about layer, which is the mental aspect accompanying the entrepreneurial journey. I will also share tips and tricks to help boost your focus, clarity, and mental resilience. Today, I really have the pleasure of talking with Barak, Rabinowitz, Jonny, Saacks, and Matz. It's really great to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And let me introduce you shortly. Jonny, let's put a camera on you. You are the managing partner. Straight up, sit straight.
Straight.
I'm not your grandma,
Stomach
just
in.
Gali. So, stomach in. Like a ballerina. Jonny, you are the managing partner of F2. Prior to F2, you were a managing partner at Genesis Partners and principal at Gemini VC. You bring extensive early stage investment experience from your roles at operational companies and venture capital funds. You have invested and served on the boards of Monday.com, PrimeSense, Newbell, and Innovid, alongside other Israeli technology companies. So it's really great to have you here. Barak, you are the managing partner of F2. Previously, you were a partner at Genesis Partners, where you focus on early stage investment opportunities and the Junction Seed investment program. Prior to Genesis Partners, you led 3 startups in the UK and Israel as co-founder and CEO, including Metopia, acquired by 888 Holdings. We had here Oad Shaked a few weeks ago, and supported numerous successful technology companies as an angel investor. And Matz, you're an operating partner at F2. You're an expert in founder dynamics and performance coaching for startups, teams, and executives. Previously, you founded and led Team Diligent, a boutique consulting firm advising founders to enhance their performance and take high-risk decisions in stressful and uncertain conditions. In this capacity, you served as special advisor to Natural Intelligence, Aurora Labs, Guesty, and other successful startups, as well as corporations like SAP. So I needed to do it quickly because you're 3 and we have so many, credentials and amazing things to say. So it's like I was on a 1.5, pace. So now we can chill down. So thanks for coming again. And actually, what I would like to discuss with you today is like in 2 directions. First of all, to hear from each and every one of you, as much as time allows, intertwined in our stories, your path and journey as a psychologist and as founder and investor and as an investor. And in the second layer is actually to understand how a VC hold this balance of working with startups and leading the investments together with keeping their mental resilience in place, and your choice as a VC to put this focus on the startup's mental health. So let's begin. Jonny, let's begin with you.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've been an early stage investor, mainly seed stage, but early stage investor for more than 20 years. So to be exact, 22 plus years. And I always have and still claim that it's all about the people. Actually, that's a tagline that I came up with when I was at Genesis Partners, and I see that as one of my achievements because I really believe that that's what makes companies tick, grow, succeed. It's all about the people. There's technology, there's the market that you target, the size of the market, et cetera, et cetera. But I believe at the end of the day, it's all about the people. And especially for a seed stage investor, there's not much to go on at the due diligence except for the people. So we try and put a lot of emphasis on the people and how we think they will play out. And it's not only individually, but it's also as a team, because no one person can carry a company. So it's always a team. It's a founding team. It's a management team. It's an executive team. It's a team of employees. It's also a team of, together with the board at some stage. So it's all about the people, and we try and help, but we also initially try and evaluate the people, but also the dynamics of the founding team, which we found was, one of the key success factors, and the opposite, key factors for failure
Hmm.
if the team doesn't tick together.
Let's try to put it a little bit more on the ground because, like, it's all about the people. It's something that we're all familiar with, and at least we all agree with it. How do you actually, like, tachlis, like we like to say in Hebrew, right? How do you actually measure, check, trying to assess in the due diligence, in the beginning, in the in phase one when you choose the companies, whether they will be able to play it out all the way, or at least for a long journey? That's one question. And to really assess the dynamic between the founders. Because as we all know deeply, it evolves and it changes all the time. So try, like, for the founders that are listening now and to other investors, what are your practice that you're using to use in order to try to evaluate it?
So I think for us, it's easy because we found Noah. So she does it for
She
us,
is the practice.
and she's the
Noah,
best in
hi,
the world.
this is the practice.
She's the best in the world. So it's all good. But before I let Noah give us maybe a few principles of what we look for and how we do it, I would say that we try and determine why the founder or the entrepreneur is actually in this.
Mhm.
The
The why.
the why,
Mhm.
and to understand what their motivation is, and what their passion is, what they really want to build, and why they're doing this. And if we can connect to that, and it's authentic, then that's a great start.
I agree. Yeah.
Hmm. So I'll start by saying that it's a two-way street. They are startups, the companies are evaluating us, and we're evaluating them. And it's a relationship. We're building a relationship. Obviously, we're investing in a very small portion of the startups we initially see. But we do try to facilitate a relationship that is built on trust from day one. So when relationships are built on trust, you can really get to know the person that is standing right in front of you. And we try to let them get to know us on an intimate level, like to get to know really who we are, who you're going to work with. Now, when we open up and we let them feel like this is going to be your new home, maybe one day. This is us. Now show us who you are. So when this relationship starts like this, I think it makes it much easier to assess the other side. And it's not an assessment process. I don't like to look at it as an assessment process because it drives you away from the person, and we want to get closer to them.
Mhm.
So the process is on and on a process of getting to know one another and being authentic and being accessible. I think this is something that we're working on in the past few years, on becoming more and more accessible. And I think it's making us a very good service. So I just want to get this.
That's very important, and I totally agree. And when you mentioned it's a two-ways road, so it's like in a relationship in life and for job people who are job seeking. So it always have to be a fit between the two sides, and not every entrepreneur, not every founder is right for this kind of investor, and vice versa. So really need to make sure that there is a fit and there is a cultural bonding there, and that we really this intimate relationship that we create really is authentic for the two of us. And for for some other investor, maybe this founder won't be a good fit, but for you, it may be, and vice versa. So also for the founders to take from it, it's not just the money. You really need to make sure that you feel comfortable for the beer test, for to have dinners together, and for also to think that when there will be a crisis, and there will be a crisis, if these founders will help you to solve it in the right way for you and for the company. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I
Barak?
wanted to add that, we have our pre-seed platform. So we say yes a lot more often. And when we say yes for the pre-seed, what we're saying is we believe in you as an individual. And let's separate the individual from the concept. We're saying now for the next 6 months, at least 6 months, you have a safe place with us, safe to explore the current direction or alternative directions. And it's almost like, well, Noah and I are new parents, and I'm learning the role of punishment and how that works. Kids can drive you crazy. And I was going to ask you the other day, Jonny has 4 sons who he successfully raised. And one
My
thing,
wife's successful.
Hi, Anat. We all
Go
love
on,
you very
Nat.
much.
yeah, and one thing I'm coming to realize is punishment doesn't work. Punishment is counterproductive. But more than that, a kid needs to feel unconditional love.
Mhm.
You would never tell a kid, eat your dinner, I'm going to give you away. You would never go there. Now, we can't give unconditional love as investors, but what we can do within, the parameters that we agree during these 6 months, it's almost like unconditional love.
Mhm.
You have a safe place. And if the economy goes to hell, if World War III breaks out, it doesn't matter. We believe in you. We're taking a bet on you. And that gives, I think, the founders the ability to experiment more and be honest with themselves if they're seeing the validation that indicates they're on the right path to building something big.
So this is with the junction when you created this platform in order really to spend the time with them, and then later on when you invest in them as a VC. So what happens next? I mean, I agree with you about the unconditional love, but what happens when you reach to a point that either the founders do not get along together, or that you are as investor you don't agree with the go to market that they are choosing to take, or with the business model that you're choosing, although it's not a decision that's made out of nowhere. It's usually a process and you are involved. But what happens in this point in time that it's not aligned, that it's not completely aligned? How do you address it?
I think the key is communication, building a relationship, as was mentioned, and transparency. If you talk about things before, and together you decide on the goals and the targets, and there's a very important, in my opinion, a very, very important principle in investing is alignment of interests, so that both sides or all sides have an alignment of interests. If there's a misalignment of interests, if one of the parties wants to build a $50 million company and the other party wants to build $1 billion company, there's a misalignment of interests, and that's difficult. So you try and determine that as early on as possible, and therefore it's good to talk and good to set together what the goals are and what the vision is. It's always the founders, right? The founders need to say, this is our vision, and hopefully the investors are in line with that. And then it's a relationship, and it's managing the relationship. It's continuously setting the goals, measuring them, seeing that you're in the right direction. If not, why not? How can we improve? And even if you do that, and I think it has to be done, that's a must-have. But even it doesn't guarantee success, right? There's still challenges along the way, agreements or disagreement. So you need to deal with it. And but I still believe if there's communication, if there's a process, if there's transparency, then we'll overcome the challenges and we'll move ahead together. Maybe not with everyone, maybe it won't suit some people, but it will be done in a productive and good way.
You're a team of founders yourself, but investors on the other side of it, but you're a team as well, and you have to manage it as well. So it's really interesting for me, maybe to take it to 2 directions. First of all, I truly agree with you with the need of having Noah as an organ, as a function in every VC. So first of all, why is it so difficult? And investors are really, most of them are resisting it, or it's difficult for them to have this kind as positions or VC. And the second question connected to it, how do you, between you as a team, we like the founders to have each own domain, right, in order not to overstep on each other. So only you know, hold this container of emotions and conversations, or you
No.
so tell us how it works.
I think it's teamwork. It's a team effort. It's not like I'm the one to hold this agenda. It's the entire team. This is how we work. Now, you said it. You said why it's so hard for investors to bring in such a position. I feel like it's so easy for us, right? It's became so easy for us. First, we were working together for a few years now, so we got to know each other, and we've been settling for a few years now and getting to know how we want to work together. And I'm learning from my partners and they learn from me. And I feel like that the team has, many times I'm not needed even in some conversations because the team has the jargon. The team knows what is not working anymore. They're not waiting for me to say, this is yes, this is no, because there's things that are obvious for us as a team, and I understand why other investors might be worrying to bring in such a position, but eventually a psychologist, one of the benefits of a psychologist is the ability to bring people together, being how do you say, a facilitator.
Mhm.
So when you look at it, and when you look at this position that way as a facilitator of conversations, I think it makes much more sense.
I think if I can suggest something, the facilitator position, which is not just for psychologists, it's also for the CEOs or for other executive or even managers, depends on the size of the company. The ability not just to be in your place, but to see the others and to help them go along and to help them communicate with each other. It's a really, really important skill for managers and for leaders, because you actually make it all moving and not stuck in a right way.
The other thing is there are teams that bring in psychologists, but you need psychologists with commercial instincts. Noah's unique in that respect. And I think, often we get the joke about, Noah's our Wendy from the show Billions. The thing about Wendy in that show is there were crazy people in that organization, and her job wasn't to make them normal. It was to find the way to harness their energy in a productive manner. Probably the most successful CEOs in the world, or the greatest founders, certainly, we're all crazy. Elon Musk is crazy to some extent, but it's about identifying that and figuring out how to complement that person with other skills to do something unique.
I really like it, and I identify you have two. No, you have two Wendy's, one in F2 and one outside of F2.
Absolutely.
But in that manner, so let's continue with the conversation in this direction. So what happens when now there is a conflict, okay, between founders? And for example, Noah is very involved emotionally with what happens there. And they not necessarily want to share everything, or there is something that also goes beyond, the commercial aspect. So how do you handle the very, very sensitive situations because as investors, yeah, we do care about the people, of course, but we also care about the ROI, and we have our own LPs behind us, and everyone has a boss, right? So how do you manage this tension? Who wants to take it?
I'll start by saying, there's always tension. It's never a smooth ride to success. There's always tensions, challenges, obstacles that you have to overcome. And it's not only in the business, it's not only in your company. It's because you, as a founder and as a team member and as an employee and as a manager, you have your family and you have your personal aspirations and you have many different factors which come into play 24/7. And how do you manage that and how do you regulate that? I always like to say, like sports, sports for me is the best analogy. These are professional athletes. These are professional CEOs. And a professional athlete, what differentiates between the good and the excellent is that they can always bring themselves to be peak performers, when needed, right? They may be a little injured. They may have tensions at home, but when they step on that field, they are the best in the world. And that's what, we are trying to help them do through Noah's relationship with them. And it becomes more complex because there's co-founders and there's other team members. So it's really, it's something that we try and help them and support them. And that's where Noah's expertise and excellence lies.
And sometimes it doesn't work out. So there has to be a divorce, and Noah's guided teams through that. So maybe you can give an example.
I wanted to say that you were describing it as if a crisis appears. And we don't want to get there. Meaning us as a fund, we strive to be in a certain relationship with the founders, at least with most of them, that we're not surprised when there's a crisis. And again, it comes back to the trust issue. Mm-hmm. So when you have trust, when you go with your founders, with the portfolio founders, it's not like we're in different side of the field. We're in the same field.
With them.
Mm-hmm. We're partners. Mm-hmm. So when you build such a sense of trust with your founders and you work with them and you make them feel along the way when there's no crisis. I mean, there's crisis every day, but there's not a big crisis. on the day-to-day, you make them feel we're on your side, and you're proving to them every day, again and again, that you're in their side. So first, crisis will not surprise you,
Mhm.
and second, when it will appear, it won't be there won't be misalignment of interests,
Mhm.
because we are all in the same side.
I agree. Most of the things that I see, and I'm sure you as well, is really the dynamic between the co-founders, if whether they are two or three. Usually, that's what happens, and the way that their communication patterns and skill changes or misaligns anymore, or trust issues among them, or changes in their life situation. They become parents, or they get divorced, or other things happen as things happen in life, and that all impacts what's going on between them. So maybe let's dive into two, three examples that you have, really, of course, without names, or from founders that you got to work with. How to really manage situations between the co-founders, and as both the head of investors, but also to support them in this situation. Don't fight.
Again, I'll say that there's always challenges, and the best teams are the ones that know how to talk about it and overcome these challenges and work productively and successfully together. Um, we have several companies that the founding team, it didn't work out, it didn't last. In some cases, the company had to shut down because of that. In some cases, the one of the founders had to leave, or chose to leave, and the other founder found another co-founder, and the company is now growing extremely well. So it's there's different cases. It always happens somehow. In some cases, the founders have stuck together, and that's great, but they had to overcome different challenges. So it always happens. Again, it goes back to talking, communications, no surprises, etc. Um, I would say that if I could say something which is more concrete and less kind of fluff, because everything I've said now is kind of, I would say, probably obvious and fluffy. But one of the
But it's the basics.
it's the basics,
It's the
yeah.
basics.
But one of the tips I would say
Mhm.
to founders is make sure that you're starting off on this journey with a partner that you believe in,
Mhm.
and that you've checked each other, and you've been together through some experiences before. It's not impossible, but it's much more difficult if you're now seeking a co-founder because you know that you have to have a co-founder, and you find someone, and the next week you guys set up the company. You need more dating, more experiences together, overcoming challenges, discussions to get to know each other well. A diverse team is even better. So rather than two or three techies from the same unit, the same demographic backgrounds, etc., I would say is less preferential than male, female, techie, business, commercial team.
I'll say humbly that I also believe in the dating and spending time together, and even doing some projects together before you kick it off. And yet, I see with the years that even the founding teams that began in a good way for the first, second, third year, so the uh, challenges are growing and changing, and the company is growing, and there's COVID, and there's a financial crisis, and there are other things that happen, and the world is, a VUCA world, so it changes all the time. And it could have been that it worked well for the first 3 years, and then the crisis comes later, like, and they couldn't anticipate it, or it was very, very, minimal, but then it exploded. From your experience as a very experienced investors, when you look from 30,000 feet, okay, from all those years, can you say that in high percentages you could see the teams that will break up at the end, or wouldn't make it until the end, or the exit, or the IPO, whatever strategy, where there are those small things that you could see that will evolve later on?
I think we've um, sometimes we see in meetings that there's tension, some kind of tension between the founders. When one of them speaks, the other is not comfortable or not feeling like he's given the space to speak speak up, to give his professional opinion. You can sense in a meeting with co-founders during a due diligence process. And I think one of the, if we're going back to what we've discussed earlier about crisis, is the best, most important tool that you can provide co-founders when they kick off, is the ability to talk to one another, giving them tools to how to engage a conversation. I'll give an example. One of our companies that started at the junction, I've noticed how they've been sitting in the office for hours, like, days and nights, forever. And I've noticed how when they have a misunderstanding, or when they're mad at one another, they stop what they're doing right now. They found a room, they sit and they talk it out. It could take 5 hours. And you can see how this ability to talk to one another, obviously I was helping them in the beginning. I was pushing them to, okay, let's try to solve this right now. So they were warming up and they were able to do it by themselves. And you can see today how this ability to talk to one another when something's wrong, how it avoids them from looping into, bad blood. So it's a tool for them now when they're a big company and they have employees and they have stress. And
there's an arsenal of tools, and we also need to know the founders in order to help them find the right thing for them. Because, for example, there are people who are more introverts and it takes them time to process. And they cannot immediately speak up or share their thoughts or even point what they're really dealing with. So it's like there are really many tools that we can help them in order to embrace into their day-to-day life.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Just that we use the analogy of marriage, divorce when we talk about founders, and I think it breaks down when you start looking at stage of company. So we're seed investors, so naturally we like strong founding team. We like that they're working together. But once the company passes the Series A and they need to start really scaling in the US, internationally, what we find more often is that maybe one founder, hopefully both, will continue to grow as individuals. But if they don't, then it's okay. It's okay to, perhaps identify a different role for one of the co-founders. But at some point, all companies need to bring in, if you're going to serve the world, you need a world-class team. You need a team that looks like the world. And it's okay to be open to that, bring in executive talent and put ego to the side.
I couldn't agree more with the differentiation that you made, because it's really changed. It's really changing once the company grows and go to market in other territories. And it's like the skills and the mindsets that they need are much different. And we really see it how sometimes one of the founders can keep up the pace, and he has this growing mindset and agile and knows how to embrace what he doesn't know and to learn it, while sometimes others, I don't want to say left behind, because it's not really left behind, but it's more challenging for them to make this leap and in this pace, because, as you raise more money, the needs and the stress is bigger. To show the returns month after month, and it's like year after year. It's much harder.
And how challenging is that for the remaining co-founders to ask or even to talk about the fact that their other co-founder needs to step down in some way? How challenging is that? So how well prepared does the founders need to be, like the founding team needs to be, for those kind of situation that they will be facing? Hard conversation to have. And if you're not, if you haven't practiced as a team to have hard conversations, then when you get to those kind of situations, you either will not have the conversation, or the result of this conversation could be devastating.
Other situations that some of the founders feel more connected to you and prefer, to share some personal information or stories with one of you. And you need to hold it to yourself, and not share it with the others, because this is also part of the meaning of psychological safety, and like to have this zone that they know that it stays with them. So how do you address it?
Yes. So first of all, the founders always feel closer to Noah. Right? Definitely more than me. But I would say that this is a long-term business, and especially in Israel, it's true, because it's a small market, and you may be able to fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So we're in this for the long term, and we want to make sure that we have good, open, honest relationships, and so we wouldn't do anything that would breach that kind of relationship. Someone like Noah, who wants them and is hoping that they will open up to her and sometimes disclose, private information, I would even say, is never something that she would disclose to us, because it would come back in a year's time or 2 years' time or 3 months' time and bite us up the you know what. So, that's a relationship that we want to maintain. So there's certain issues that the founders always feel close to talking to Noah. And frankly, a relationship with a board member is not an easy relationship for, let's call, for the CEO.
Mhm.
They usually don't want to disclose everything, because there's, maybe it'll change tomorrow, the bad news, the good news,
Mhm.
and they need to have some kind of facade. On the other hand, you want them to share as much as possible information so that we can go on this journey together. On the third hand, they have the executives and the employees and the managers in the companies that they need to have some kind of image, let's call it, and perception and position. So the role of the CEO is extremely lonely. It's a very, very difficult and lonely role. So when they have someone like Noah that they trust, and they know that whatever they share with her stays with her, it's a great help and a lot of support.
So, to reflect on what you said and to make sure I got it correctly, so from your point of view as a VC, this is actually part of the reason to have this kind of position, to create this separation if needed,
Mhm.
because you want to give as many as much help as needed, as
Exactly.
many tools as needed to the founder or to the founding team, and they can choose whether they need this kind of mental support more to go to this direction. And also, you embrace it that being board members in their companies, they not necessarily feel comfortable to share everything with you, and they therefore they can do it with you, for example, with Noah. But it also have to they have to feel that you really keep those boundaries between you as a team, that they know that they can trust that what they say to Noah stays with Noah, and also for you to respect it. And sometimes it's not easy to manage this tension, because there's a piece of information that is very crucial to understand the whole picture of something, which you don't want to share now with them because you want to keep their privacy. And on the other hand, you cannot understand as investors the whole picture, right?
Yeah, but
So,
again, if you
just
go ahead,
before
please.
you talk, I just I remembered something that was discussed in our team meeting this morning.
Yeah,
It's not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
right.
So yeah, it's not easy.
Nothing is easy in life, right?
Well,
no, it's not easy if you want to
it's
accomplish.
I'm not saying nothing is easy, but I'm not that type of person. But it's not easy. Remember, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Mhm.
I
Barak?
just said again, we can zoom out and look at the stages. So we're seed investors. So once we're on board, by definition, another fund, a bigger, usually U.S. fund, will lead the A round, B round, C round. At that point, after the seed investment, we're stuck. Stuck together.
Mhm.
So that's why we always encourage founders, take an Israeli fund for the early stage. We'll work together. It's in both of our interests to sort out any issue, right? Because we're not leading. So you have nothing to worry about by opening up and confiding in us. We just want the company to achieve its milestones so that it can reach the next level and hand off the baton.
No, you want
I'll
to
add
add
an
something?
example. It's not
Yeah.
a few examples. I have a few examples in mind of things that happened in our companies, which my partners did not know of. And they trust me that if something comes to me in a company which I'm not a board member in, I will help the founders fix it live. And if we see this is that the board members need to attend, then I will uh, strongly suggest the founders to go speak
Mhm.
to the board members. This is something the board members should know.
Mhm.
And then this is a dance that we have. Something
This is exactly the facilitation that you spoke about earlier,
بيديك. Exactly.
how it happens.
So maybe it starts with me, maybe it starts with the board member, but if it starts with me, I'll try to fix it. It could be something big, and I managed to fix it in quickly. And if not, then I will suggest the founders to go ahead and escalate, and we do it together.
I want to take you to another direction because we know that it's difficult for the founders, right, to build a company from early stage and on to growth. But it's also very complex to be an investor and to hold this responsibility and to make the right choices to in which companies to invest. So, share with me a little bit about your personal journey and how do you feel that the things that you've been through uh, uh, during your life, where you were born, which is not in here, and like the things that built your character and your resilience in this journey in leading early stage startups.
Sure, I guess I'll start. I've always been a bit of an outsider and always valued meaningful relationships. So, I mean, I grew up a Jewish kid in a small town in Ohio. So immediately, then I went to a boarding school, like in the movies, like you may have seen Dead Poets Society. It was like that,
Amazing.
right? Again, I was the minority and formed my friends were the guy from Mexico and the guy from South Korea. It wasn't the mainstream quarterback of the football team. On to college, Jesuit college, and then my first job. And then eventually I came out to Israel. I volunteered in the army with a small band of crazy guys who were embedded with an infantry battalion. And I bring that same spirit to this job. Combine that with from each experience you have in your life, you maintain some very, not big in number, but big in meaning relationships. And this job as an investor fuses the both together. So being on the outside, having a lot of empathy and having a network of meaningful relationships to call on, I think infuses our job, because we talk about why we do the things we do. And having this focus that what drives or motivates at least me and I think us is these relationships. It doesn't matter then if a company had a bad day or a good day, because all the time we're harnessing these relationships. And if I just if a founder calls us and confides in us, that's a success.
Hmm. Thanks for that, Jonny.
Wow. Um, I was born in South Africa, came to Israel when I was 10 years old. Um, Now, when I look back, I say, I was kind of thrown in the deep end. I didn't speak the language. I never thought about it then, but I had to do good. I had to work harder. I had to try harder. I had to, because the home that I was brought up in was always through education or through sports was, aim high, strive for excellence, and that's something that I took with me. I say that because I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs are immigrants, um, and Israel is a land of immigrants,
Hmm.
right? So I think that's one of the reasons that Israel is such a good startup environment and ecosystem, and that's why we have so many successes in technology and innovation. So that was the kind of first chapter of my life. The second was the military. I spent 10 years in the Israeli military in a unit in the intelligence corps, and that taught me a lot about resilience, about teamwork, about failure, learning from failure, improving successes, making decisions under pressure. uh, you know all those unbelievable things which I would never ever have experienced at such a young age. And I think that's one of the definite benefits of the Israeli military, that young people, men and women, are given this huge and enormous responsibilities and have to deal with issues and make decisions. So that was, an important part of my, I would say, education and professional kind of foundation. I think that's true for entrepreneurs. If you know why you're doing thing, if
Hmm.
you have that goal in mind, and you've built the good building blocks for learning, doing, repeating, etc.,
Hmm.
it'll serve you well. That was my second chapter, I think. And then the third chapter was using relationships that I had built over the years, whether it's in the military or through the technological units of the military. And then I was, and then another factor came into my life, which is luck. So luck is always an important factor. Tfu, tfu, tfu.
Touch wood.
But I claim that luck is something that you have to identify, right? The harder you work, the luckier you get. And I say luck because it was 99 and the dot-com boom had just started, and because of many people that I knew and were talking to me, and because there was so much activity at the time, I said, wow, this is an amazing combination. People, technology and innovation, and money. and I said I'd like to be involved in VC, in that industry, and that was kind of, now that's my third chapter in life, and I'm very lucky to be a part of this because it combines all my passions, and I love what I do, and I'm lucky to have such good partners and people that I work with.
It sounds amazing, and really the different stages that you've mentioned really reflect also on the journey that founders go through from the resilience from the army and really the immigrants component that you've mentioned, and later on to find our own joy as investors, as psychologists, as the professionals, and how to make it also what we do from our day to day. Now, do you also want to share something?
Yeah, sure. So, if going back to the army, so I learned in the army that preparing teams for high stress missions, again, being a facilitator, but in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
is something that I think I'm good at
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very passionate about, and it excites me. So I was also in the intelligence corps, right? And I was preparing teams for their missions at night.
Mm-hmm.
So there I learned that this is what I love to do. And then fast forward post my MA, when I started Team Diligent, I was a child and it was a mountain to climb, like to start when no one understands why VC should be why a non-financial person should be in it, in an investment team, in a partnership, in a VC. That sounded so
Mhm.
far away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very hard. It was very hard to get into this world. And I think that the fact that it was so hard for me then, and it took so long, now I can relate to our founders. And when they hear, I also have my story, they relate to me more. Okay, she understands what I'm talking about. She's not just not just a psychologist.
It didn't just land on her. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more, and I think you really described it beautifully. It's a mountain to climb. I think that everyone that choose to reach something which is bigger, which has impact, which is really creating something that wasn't existing before. It's really a mountain to climb, and our journey is really what creates the uh, both the destination and the accomplish at the end, but most of it the way and the journey. And before we hit the pause, because this is also something that I always say to my entrepreneurs, and because it's never a dot, like it's always something that's continuing, and you have to go back to amazing small leave. So I just want to reflect
Hmm.
something that, like we like to search in our founding teams that we work with, what brings them together, what unites them, those values that are really common to all of them. So it was really beautiful to listen to all of you and to really feel, not as I didn't ask you a question, what are your values, right? Because it will be boring. But from the conversation and from the insights that you shared and what you brought here and the examples, so to see how important for you are the relationships, nurturing relationships and people, and the empathy that you talk about, and how you use communication, all of you, as a tool, even if it wasn't like the most common muscle that you grew up with, but you learned and evolved in it, and you use it today. And I think that this is really something that is important to a team of founders or investors or whatever kind of team, because that's really what helps them in the crisis and in the challenges to continue further, to continue harder with all their might, even in challenging times. It was really beautiful to see it coming from you. Anything else that you would like to share before we hit a pause? Something important? I mean, we can talk for hours, but we
No.
did it sharp today and to the point.
That's how we roll.
That's the
Yeah,
way to roll,
I
right?
guess you have the.
For founders that wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
F2VC, Hajjaj, North Tower, 25th floor. Everyone's welcome. And
Easy
of
to
course,
find.
email, Twitter.
So thank you
LinkedIn.
again, really, for joining me today, Barak and Jonny and Noah. Thank you very much for coming. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank
To our
you.
lovely listeners, we're going to hit pause until the next episode. That's also something I say to the entrepreneurs in my clinic in between sessions. If you enjoyed listening, I would really appreciate it if you share the podcast with people who you think would derive value from it. Thanks to the amazing studio at Google Campus that allow me to record all this important, very important, you agree, right, content in here. Feel free to visit my website at galiblocheliran.com and leave there your details if you wish to be updated and learn more about the mental aspects of the entrepreneurial journey. Also, be sure to follow my podcast, The Human Founder, in any of your podcast apps. Thank you again for coming. Let's hit the
Thank you,
post till
Gali.
next
Thank you,
time.
Gali.